Greetings, and happy Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. As usual, we're just getting things going at whatever time of day and week is. I was gonna say appropriate. It's not really the right word. Convenient? I don't know. Whenever the moon strikes, is that what I was saying? I don't know. I wanted to play some Prince of Persia, and here we are. That's kind of the long and short of it. What's up, Killix69? What's up, Father Axekeeper? It's Destroyer, Mudbound Dragon, Crushing Ceiling, Base Hopper Copter, Lurkers in chat, VOD viewers, and everybody else. Welcome. 1989 Prince of Persia ? Yes and no. We are, as you might be seeing down here, currently in the midst of my little project to play 24 different versions of the 1989 Prince of Persia, and we've made it through about 2/3 of the list, 3/4 maybe, and we have made it to the unofficial Russian 1996 ZX Spectrum port, which I've been excited to play. There's a couple of these homebrew, fan-made, unofficial ports, most of them significantly more recent than this. And given the sort of fan enthusiast nature of these projects, it's always interesting to look at them sort of in contrast to the official ports. I will say, from the about 20 or so seconds of this game I played about 30 minutes ago to test that everything was working, has me a little... I don't know that concerned is the right word. It's not an inappropriate word to use, but we might be in for a little bit of a ride. I'm excited to see how the game shakes out. Yeah, I don't have a great deal of familiarity with the Spectrum. It was certainly never a platform that had much relevance or popularity here. If it ever did, it was certainly before my time. But it was not something I ever really came across in the wild. Not even in, like, flea markets or that kind of thing. Like, strictly, I only became familiar with it, like, through the internet. And as such, I don't have much first-hand experience. I've only ever messed with it via emulators, and even then, it's pretty limited exposure. But it is a neat, family of systems, and obviously hugely important for, like, the general history of European computer, game and software development and the whole scene and culture and market and everything. The European computer history is very interesting because it's so regional and so sort of... of course you can talk about, like, European computer history as a singular thing, but it really isn't monolithic like that. Like, every part of Europe had its own culture and its own sort of platforms that were popular and its own sort of timeline and market. So there's, significant overlap, but also very significant regional differences. So I don't think the Spectrum was ever particularly a thing in Scandinavia. But it was certainly a thing in other parts of Europe outside the UK. My understanding is that it was, there was kind of this underground scene in the Soviet Union, and there were a lot of sort of pirated things, and it being small and cheap and, like, everything that kind of made it a success originally, I think were also things that made it an attractive or sort of viable platform in both for piracy in a very broad general sense, but also sort of like, you can see it in a lot of other there are other parallels too, where whether it's arcade games or computer games or consoles, where the stuff that's like easy to pirate, the stuff that's cheap to produce, tends to pop up in a lot of like economically weaker markets, or things kind of take on their own life with its own separate sort of ecosystem and timeline. You had the Russian like Dendy, the Famiclones and stuff like that, and I'm not very knowledgeable about this, so I'm not speaking with any kind of authority, but my understanding is the ZX Spectrum held sort of a similar kind of position, I guess, where they may or may not have had official units, but they had compatible software at least. I would imagine, I don't know for sure. I know the MSX had a presence in like Spain and the Netherlands, but I want to say that Spectrum was also like, I want to say that Spanish language Spectrum software is not uncommon, but also these like Eastern European, Russian things. And again, it's, well, evidenced is maybe a strong word, but today's game is one example of that with this 1996 Russian homebrew project. But I don't really know that much more about the game. I don't know about the Russian Spectrum scene in the mid-90s, from which this would have come. I honestly don't remember when I first would have heard about this, but I don't know. I'm sure I would have come across it at some point or another. But it's been around for a long time, which makes it interesting, because I think it's also 1996 is certainly past the Spectrum's commercial lifespan in a sort of general sense. In simple terms, certainly as far as Sinclair themselves were concerned, like it was not a particularly ongoing concern, I'm sure, in 1996. But it's also not the same thing as, people developing new games for a system 30 years later, because I reckon at that point it was still more of a gray area of like, you would have enthusiasts sort of keeping it alive. You would have, because there certainly still were commercial releases in some markets, like well into the 90s. That's not super weird. But there's a difference between 92, 93, and 96. There's still quite a big gap there. But I think it's a small enough gap that if we account for things being a year or two late in certain markets, and perhaps there being a lack of financial incentive or opportunity to sort of jump on newer tech, it's not inconceivable to think, that how do I put it? That the people who made this game, for example, or the kind of people who were making Spectrum stuff in 1996, it's not dissimilar really from like people who were making Amiga stuff in like 97 and maybe beyond, where it's like, it's not really a matter of coming back to something you were into decades ago. There's a continuity, I would assume, with like the people who developed and released these things at that time. They were probably doing this thing in the 80s and the early 90s too. So there is like for me at least, I think of it slightly differently. It's not wholly a thing where it's sort of, I'm not sure how to phrase it exactly, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Like when people make a new Commodore 64 game in 2026, when people make a new Mega Drive game or a ZX Spectrum game or whatever it is, it feels like it's not necessarily part of... I'm sure there are people who have been releasing Commodore 64 software continuously for the past 40 years. Like, I'm sure that's a thing too. But there is such a I guess the currently sort of ongoing development scene and sort of enthusiast scene for old computers and video games feels like something. There's a continuity between what we have today and something that maybe started in like the early 2000s, I feel like. The idea of retro gaming, or, you know, something that firmly is part of the past, but you still engage with it, as opposed to something that it like exists but isn't the newest current thing. I think those are kind of two different things. I mean, it's, I don't know, this might seem like a strange parallel, but, you know, someone playing Fortnite or Minecraft on their Switch, or someone, you know, playing Final Fantasy 14 on their, I guess the PS3 probably isn't supported anymore, but like that kind of thing, right? Where it's like, you know, a decade old thing, and you're not interested in, you know, forget the PS6. These are, you know, players who have no interest or need to care about a Switch 2 or a PS5. I think there's arguably more similarities to that, where it's like people who are into games and into this certain thing, but not necessarily the most current. I mean, obviously it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like I said, I think there's a difference between that and sort of more deliberately looking to something that is of a bygone era. Now, obviously, time advances at different rates, sort of as far as tech and games go, but I digress. Point being, there's something, I guess, especially interesting to me about a Spectrum game released in 1996 versus some of these other versions we're going to be looking at, like the Commodore 64 version from 2011, which is interesting and cool in its own right, but there's something more kind of Wild West. Like, the idea of releasing this kind of thing, for me, doesn't feel like it was as established at that point in time, and that kind of makes it more intriguing to me. I kind of want to get things going today, so we're gonna hop right to this, and you can see here my little timeline of game releases alongside our results and review. So as you can see, the games here are listed at in roughly, at least, chronological order of release. We're doing one run of each game. We're not what's the word? Committing to seeing everything through to the end. We're just doing one run and assessing our experience and then moving on to the next. So for each game, I marked them with a trophy for games that we finished, and skulls for games that we did not. And with the exception of the Super Famicom version, which is a completely different game with completely different levels, for the most part, any game we didn't finish, that was the result of the port being weird or bad or broken in some way. I am well familiar with this game, so if it behaves properly and everything runs the way it should, I would not expect to have trouble finishing the game in an hour. But when it doesn't behave the way it should, all bets are off. And following at the end of each game here, you see my highly sophisticated, advanced emoji-based review scale, where I try my best to sum up my feelings about each game with a little face. So I had mentioned previously that I was very excited for this last stretch of releases because it has those fan-made versions, but it's honestly, it continues to be kind of a mixed, not a mixed bag. I don't mean quality-wise, although that may be true as well, but it's a potpourri, if you will, of different kinds of releases. And today we will most likely be getting through both the Spectrum version and the 1999 Game Boy Color release, which I have very low expectations of, given that it is my understanding that it is brought to us by, sort of at least, the same people who brought us the original Game Boy release, which was terrible. Maybe the worst so far. So it'll be interesting to see if the Game Boy Color version is any different. The Mega Drive version is it's very frustrating because it's got some really cool stuff to it, and then it's got probably the most broken combat of any version, plus a bunch of other issues. But I can't bring myself to hate it because it's still too cool in some ways, and it's actually like I can have fun with it. It's not like the Game Boy version that just pissed me off, or the Sam Coupe version, which was just frustratingly non-functional. So it's got more going for it. It's not a good port. I wouldn't recommend it per se. I wouldn't put it on my list. You know, in the very simple binary divide between good and bad ports, ultimately for me that comes down to whether it plays the way it should. If it plays the way it should, everything else is secondary. And it takes a lot for a port to win me over if it doesn't play the way it should. But the Mega Drive version, like, I love the graphics in it, and it's so cool in some ways that it kind of wins me over despite the fact that it doesn't play the way it should. Starting to lose track on how, to what degree each emoji expresses disapproval. Well, then you're right. You know, that's, how do I put it? That makes two of us. It's hard to know, honestly, how to feel about some of these, so it's kind of comes down to how I feel in the moment and how to best express it. But it would be very difficult to do like a numbered ranking. But what I knew going in, and which is part of what I love about this game, is that there really truly is no definitive version. There are so many versions that have something going for it. Like, if someone asked me which version should I play, I would probably say, well, the DOS version is probably the most accessible. Start with that one by all means. And if you like the game, here's like 8 other versions that are sick. If you like the game, you will like these too. But there isn't one version that I would recommend over others, really. Like, PC98 version is maybe the closest, but at the same time, like, if you don't play the Mega CD version, you don't play the DOS version, you don't play the Atari ST version, like, oh man, you're missing out, dude. There's a lot of cool versions. Up Bangle 61. NES version is not good. It's trying to remember. It's got weird little layout differences here and there. It has scrolling. That's like the mega fucked up thing. It's like the Super Nintendo Prince of Persia 2, where they didn't adapt the graphics properly to the NES resolution. So it, like, the display is 256 pixels wide, but every room is 320 pixels wide. So you don't see the entire screen on screen at one time. And that alone kind of, I mean, it fucks the game up pretty badly. But it's also, like, I remember I like the look of the, like, the color palette used for the dungeon tile set's pretty appealing. But it's I want to say that it's got some weird animation stuff going on. Like, the Master System is all over the place with the animation speeds, but I think the NES version was kind of similar to that as well. Honestly, I've kind of purged it from memory. I just know that it was bad. But it's, like, it was still... I think we made it to, like, level 7 or something. Like, we definitely struggled with it. I don't remember if the combat was all busted too, but I feel like I don't know. It had, like, weird movement, like the distance was weird. Oh, and the action button works all differently. You don't hold the button and press directions to walk. Like, you tap the B button to take a step forward. So it's, you can't really control it the way you do in other versions, and it's like, it doesn't sound like a huge difference perhaps, but there's a lot of scenarios that kind of work out a little differently because of it. So lots of weird little changes and differences. It's definitely not a version I would recommend. Like the super basic rule of thumb is like, if it's a Japanese developed version, it's probably good, and if it's not Japanese developed, it's probably bad. There are exceptions to that. The PC Engine CD version is not great, and obviously the computer ports, that's a bit different. But you know, for most of the ports, that rule kind of applies, or at least console versions, at the very least. But yeah, it's interesting because even the ones that are kind of busted, they typically aren't busted in the exact same way. It's usually, you know, broadly a failure to replicate the controls and mechanics of the original, but as you might expect, they fail to replicate those things in kind of different ways. But honestly, I think that's enough messing around. Let's get my timer up here. I guess we'll put that over here. And let's get ready to enjoy the ZX Spectrum version. Fade out these jams. And see, I don't know if I have to capture. Yep, no, we're good to go. I think I just opened this file. So I have, it's like, you know, I grabbed a zip and it has like 5 different dumps. I'm kind of picking one at random, but hopefully it should work fine. We'll see. If it starts crashing or weird stuff happens, we might try a different one. But I did, like I said, a few seconds worth of testing. And it seemed to run okay. So Omega Group, I think, is the cracker group or release group or whatever. Nicodem's the developer. Game audio looks like it's completely peaking. Let me turn it down just a little bit. So it's in Russian, by the way, but that should be fine. That's pretty cool. Jafar just teleports in. The hourglass. And yeah, as you say, Bengal, like every version has its own flavor for sure, and I think that goes for, like, the bad versions are bad for different reasons, the good versions are good for different reasons. Well, I mean, you could simply say that they're all good because they play properly, but they all have their unique appeal based on the original version of the excellent game. Very true. Music arranged by DJ Musicsoft. The most beautiful computer, the Spectrum Pentagon 128. Shoutouts to the folks in Yaroslav. What's up, Dino, please? Big Spacky Gaming. Indeed, indeed. We'll see at what scale gaming will expand. I don't know, but it should be pretty good. Should be pretty good. Was there a completely unplayable Mega Bad version? I was previously convinced that the Master System version was that, but then when I played it again recently, I like sort of enjoyed it. It's probably the most broken, but I don't know. It's if you're a Prince of Persia sicko, you may find enjoyment in it, but it's definitely mega bad. The Sam Coupe, otherwise, maybe the most terrible version. where like none of the game rules apply the way they should, like at all. All right, so we got the attract mode demo level. That was missing, I think, in the... There was some version, it might have been the Masters version, where the attract mode just showed level 1 instead of... So in the original game, just like we saw here, like the attract mode shows a bit of gameplay that is a level that does not exist in the actual game. The Game Boy version is atrocious. I'll say that much for sure. I mean, the thing is, like, yes, you could rank the bad versions by badness, but also there's a good, like, there's not many of them that I would say, oh, it's bad, but you might want to check it out. Well, you know, it's like the PC Engine one, it's mostly the combat that's fucked up, and there's a strategy that you can use to work around it, but it's like a lot of effort to play a version that it's like I can give you some tips to avoid hating it and maybe have a slightly better time, but it's still not as good as it should be. So at a certain point, every one of these versions that fail to meet the bar of how good it should be, doesn't really matter how much better or worse it is. But if you want to have a really bad experience, just, you know, for a lark, boot up the Game Boy version. That's probably more accessible than the Sam Coupe version. And I would say the Game Boy one is probably the most sort of immediately and laughably fucked up. The Master System version is kind of up there, but it's still, like I said, weirdly... sort of weirdly playable in spite of it. But the Game Boy one is probably the most... The Game Boy one and the Sam Coupe one, to me, are the ones that have the most egregious breaking of the core rules of the game mechanics. Where in the Sam Coupe version, it uses graphics from the DOS version, but I guess it runs at a lower resolution, so it doesn't like fit them all on screen properly. But they didn't... It's not scrolling. So what they did is like they arbitrarily removed like 1.5 column of tiles from every screen. So the layouts don't quite match. And there are these very strange situations where there are like half tiles, which right off the bat is like, well, that's bizarre. And then on top of that, because all of the alignments are out of whack, it's like, well, okay, that makes certain jumps and stuff very strange. So aligning yourself correctly is like even more crucial than it's supposed to be. But you can't really do that because a unique feature of the Sam Coupe version is that if you take one of these like careful, sneaky steps, the game won't keep you from falling off ledges. So you can't use it to like align yourself at an edge of a... See what he just did there? You can't do that in the Sam Coupe version. You'll just step over the edge and fall down. So that's pretty fucked up. The Game Boy version has the unique feature of your position is hard locked to the grid. You will always be standing in the middle of a tile. There's no minimum movement distance smaller than a full tile, which also kind of breaks a lot of stuff. The controls and animation are all kind of messed up even beyond that, but just on a basic level, that's like a pretty core understanding. But also, I don't know, it's just a blatantly drastic change to the game mechanics. Drawing up Prince of Persia quotient index. Nah. We're doing a thorough enough look, just kind of experiencing them, in my opinion. This was never meant to be like this big project, to be honest. When I first set out to do it, the idea wasn't to be thorough at all. It was like, I want to play a handful of these versions that I haven't played before, and since I'm at it, I should probably take, you know, the Super Nintendo version and the, you know, the Mega CD version, some of these versions that I know that I like, I should take those for a spin as well. And then I kind of put together the list, and I realized that, well, I should probably look at this and that too. And before we know it, it was like, well, I guess we might as well do kind of all of them. So it's predictably it's expanded a little bit, At the end of the day, it's still I just want to play them each once to have a better idea of how they compare. But it's not a super in-depth thing, really. All right, so it's kind of interesting. They recreated this screen, which to my understanding is the kind of new game or password screen, as we have seen in the Game Boy and NES versions. I don't speak Russian. I used to be able to read Cyrillic quite smoothly when I lived in Bulgaria, but that was 14, 15 years ago, so I've kind of lost that. But pretty sure right means new game. Now, because this is a Spectrum game, we are, of course, playing with the customary Spectrum controls of O and P for left and right, A and Q for up and down, and I think space is the action key. Yep. All right, so let me move that cursor. Game speed is a little interesting here because it seems kind of similar to the Apple II version, where it's really smooth and fast when it's fast, and then kind of it slows down a bit. Interesting, the spike traps don't animate. I'm not sure what this sort of sound situation is. We had music in the title screen and everything, but there does not appear to be any sound effects. Okay, jumping seems to work pretty much the way I would expect. You can tell for sure that there's a bit of slowdown when we have falling tiles. Not too bad. Hidden tiles or hidden switches rather are completely hidden. You know, standing jumps are a little strange with this keyboard layout, I gotta admit. Just because the Q and O keys aren't exactly next to each other. All right, okay, flashbang, fair enough. So it's funny, just the keyboard layout itself makes it a little difficult to make sort of a one-to-one comparison. Okay. I guess the switch wasn't even there, because the door didn't close. This might be a first for this project, actually taking a death in stage 1. For some reason, I'm not close enough to the edge to come down there. I think the running jump definitely does not quite behave correctly. I don't think it's necessarily a fault of the... Whoa, okay. You can't crouch while running. That's different. So I can't seemingly get closer to the wall than this. Yeah. So that was like a little bit of a test. So you're supposed to need 3 tiles to do a running jump. You can see there I was like just barely... of course, you can't see the tile sort of divisions on the floor itself, which makes it a little more difficult. But you can you see it on the wall, sort of in front of you, or below you, or I guess it's more accurate. So I think this, yeah, this position that I'm in here, this is the rightmost edge of the tile, even though it looks like I could stand a pixel or two further to the right. And if I'm that far away, then I have the full tile width to run. But here, because there's a wall, I can't get that far. Like I'm a pixel or two away from the wall, so it's not enough distance. Now, I'm not saying that it's a sure fact that that would give me enough room to complete that running jump. in another version of the game. But the ability to not quite get up against the wall felt a little off. Yeah, I wasn't quite at the edge there. Yeah, the running jumps, I can't quite tell if they don't work the way they should. But I can tell if they don't, there's something about them that doesn't behave the way I intuitively expect. Will that create impossible jumps? That remains to be seen. It's a lot of those things, like, it's not something I memorize, like the specifics of... Yeah, the switch to close that door just isn't there. That's interesting. So maybe hidden switches aren't invisible. But this should be enough. Yeah. In fact, it looked like I jumped sooner, even. It's for sure a little unpredictable. Let's see how the combat goes. Weird little sprite wraparound thing on the top right. Looks like someone was like running out the edge of this. Whoa, I like canceled the vertical jump with a forward jump, it looked like. That was a little weird. Usually it would tell you the time at the beginning of the life. Yes. Up to parry still. Okay. It does kind of appear as though counterattacking is not a thing in this version. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that combat's fucked. We kind of need enemies who fight back a little more before we can fully ascertain that's the case. There we go. All right, 6 minutes for level 1 is not good. But we did slow down to do a little research. So we could make up the time. But we'll see what... I don't know what the game says about time. Oh yeah, passwords. Will it actually tell us at all? So in most other computer versions, you would press the space bar to get the time. But space is the action key here. So... See, there are things like that that happen that aren't, like, quite right. Maybe there's no time limit. You know, that's not impossible if it's like a cracked version or whatever, too. I mean, it wasn't like a trainer or anything, but... Yeah, that was weird. Running jumps are gonna be weird. I mean, is there like a T? Yeah, there we go. T for time. It sounds pretty satisfying, I gotta say. Like, sound is not an area where I expect a Spectrum game to impress me. Gonna be brave. Actually, can I... oops. Alright, scooting is still a thing. That's good. Like, you can block, and I don't know, I haven't successfully blocked yet. Whoa. What's going on here? This is different. Okay, I'm confused and perplexed. Just like change the layout. But part of why the Mega Drive version's combat's mega fucked is because if you block an attack, you get pushed back like really far and you can't counterattack. So blocking basically is useless. And if the counterattack is missing, that certainly makes the blocking worse. But I have to concentrate here. The controls are so strange. Except with the keyboard layout. If the block at least prevents you from being pushed back super far, then at least blocking serves a purpose. See, under normal circumstances, I would just running jump that, no problem. But like, I don't really trust... Okay. That looks strange. I don't really trust the running jump in this version. So once we have, like, mandatory running... What the heck? I can't go to the left? Man, okay, we might see some strange discrepancy. Well, we get to see the scenic route here where you get to fight this guy. I never take this path because you don't have to. It's faster to go on the left and you don't have to do this fight. But the left path was just blocked off. Well, that's kind of wild. And yeah, there's like a tile missing. But open the exit, by the way, with no sound effect. There's supposed to be 2 tiles on the left there. Obviously, you know, the graphics being what they are, I don't instinctively make that kind of comparison. But now I'm wondering if this version also maybe is like 1 tile short. Like in terms of what's on, like how many tiles are on screen. I guess that might well be the case. If that is the case, like, of course, there's going to be kind of peculiar changes and compromises in places. Now we get, like, loose, or, like, I'm assuming they're loose. Oh, wow. Okay, so that it doesn't actually show you... Okay, we're probably... this is going to be awkward. Yeah, this is going to be difficult. The spacing is weird. It's funny, level 3 has given us trouble in some of the ports, but it's usually because of the skeleton, not this part. So normally, those loose tiles aren't there. They're just gaps. But it is different here because there's like a 1 tile gap. Supposed to be... Both these gaps are supposed to be 2 tiles. But this enables us to do this instead. I have to press so early. Yeah, the timing for the running jumps is strange. Hard to explain it. But it seems like I have to press up sooner than I expect. So we have to drop down here to open the exit. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I want us to do a running jump. Faster than running, sort of. But yeah, it's really once you have to, like in the spots where you actually have to do a running jump, where it becomes more apparent that things work differently. Fuck's sake. I guess I leant into the trap. And there's no checkpoint in this version. Fucking hell. You move pretty speedily, but time seems to move pretty rapidly as well. Yeah, we're about on par with my real-time clock. I guess there's not a lot of downtime for, like, deaths and what have you. It has me a little bit worried. Something about the acceleration, like, beginning and stopping movement feels like not quite the way it should. I mean, given what we've experienced on other computers, this version, I mean, for being a fan-made thing for that matter, it punches above its weight. I think that's fair to say. Cannot believe I made it through there. Very respectful skeleton, waiting for me to get ready. Oh, a sound effect. But, you know, it's not perfect. Yeah, I think for sure each screen is like missing a tile column. No preemptive holstering in this version. Fine. There we go. 45 minutes or so. Palace tile set coming up. Honestly, the controls, the QAOP movement is what's throwing me off more than anything. See if this level functions correctly. I was having weird trouble with this in the Mega Drive version. My usual route just didn't quite work. It wasn't super clear to me why. Okay, that's interesting. Collided with the gate. That's not how that normally works. Yeah, that extra little lag before it starts running is very, very tangible when you're trying to run through traps. Oops. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Fuck off. I meant to do a running jump. I'm not even sure how that... I must have hit the left key in a panic. I didn't realize I did, but... I hit the space bar for sure, but I must have hit the O key also. Here, I was thinking I could save a second or two. See, that's what I was trying to do. That's interesting, the fact that I could sort of land on that tile and still have time to jump. That's not normally how that works, but hey, this route at least works, and this door should be open. Yeah, there we go. The running jumps, I get tripped up by the directional inputs, for sure. It wasn't... I think I was able to grab that. Couldn't quite tell. Of course. Because that's troublesome if that guy is like one tile closer now than he's supposed to be, because the screen is one tile narrower. The actual slowdown that happens isn't particularly bothersome. You know, there's less of it than in some versions. Oh my god, you still can't climb through. Wow, I thought I was waiting long enough for sure. But there's delays. Like I mentioned, where you sort of, when you start running, or even when I land after a fall, like I drop down here, the way he sort of stands there for a moment before he starts running doesn't feel right to me. Now the thing is, if I step through this trap, I feel like there's a very real chance that I will be... Well, it worked. I didn't want to be like with my heel up against it and be sort of stuck, but it turns out that was safer anyway. Go left, you can loop around to the beginning of the level and do that one more time if you really want to. It is interesting that the spike traps are just extended. Takes a little bit of stress out of it, not having to worry about them being hard to notice. That we need, that doesn't really serve a purpose. Difficult to take damage at this point without dying. Well, it's not exactly true. We're going to take damage from going through the mirror, but feels so terrifying. All right. Gotta say I'm a little disappointed. I noticed that the guards have like transparent legs or whatever. I was kind of hoping we would get another cool ghost effect on the shadow like in the original, in the Apple II version. But nope, he's just like me for real. I do like that for the most part we can be quite aggressive in combat and not really suffer too much for it. That's good for like speed purposes, essentially. 40 minutes. Now we kind of do want to drop down here. Health. Fucking terrifying when he does the vertical jump animation at the beginning of his forward jump. Because if you stand on the edge to do like a perfectly spaced forward jump there, if you actually do a vertical jump, you will fall off the edge. Let me show you. So I'm on the edge and I do a vertical jump. Because that pushes you forward like a pixel or two, it actually would make you fall down. And, you know, that can happen if you kind of fuck up your inputs. Just about to say, I need to actually start thinking about defending here. What the? Oh my god, I got pushed through the door. What the fuck? I might be dead now, because I could have probably blocked there, but I was terrified that I wouldn't even have time to draw the sword. Yeah, the hitbox pushing me through the door was a little aggressive there. And pushing me to the right. I wanted to see if I could block on reaction, and I'm not having great luck with it. Yeah, I feel like trying to defend is a real liability here. What's up, MTI? So, okay, we might reach a point here where combat might be a problem. But maybe not, we'll see. Because we should get another health extension on this level. I opted to skip the one on level 3 because it can be a little bit of a time sink. But if you got a little more margin to work with, it can be okay. But I think there's one more guy after the next one. So I'm going to try not to overextend. Keep my health a little bit. I 'Cause 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 ' Yeah, I'm gonna move forward a little bit here so I'm not getting pushed through the door again. That's uncomfortable. Yeah, this looks fine. I mean, it's a little funky the way it plays, but largely good. It's definitely got some issues. Some things that aren't replicated, like the blocking being a bit fucked and counterattacking. I guess it's hard to tell if it's a thing. I guess I must have blocked successfully once in that first fight because I was able to determine that I wasn't able to counterattack. I don't know that for a fact, but blocking itself to begin with is so awkward. I guess there's no health extension in this level. I always get them mixed up. Unless I don't know. I might have missed one. I mean, it's certainly not the worst computer version, that's for sure. But it's not entirely faithful either. Like I said, I wouldn't know for a fact without, like, whoa, comparing. Yeah, that looks a little different. But I think each screen has, like, a different number of tiles than it's supposed to. I do kind of wonder if a unique sprite for the minister. If I'm thinking something with loose tiles, but they're obviously in the game. There was some other mechanic that oh yeah, hidden switches. I'm wondering if hidden switches aren't in the game, because I feel like there have been more than one situation where I expect there to be a hidden switch and there just isn't one. Loose tiles not... Yeah, see, this gap should be one tile wider, because I should not have been able to do that. That's nice, first try level 6. $35. Okay, we're doing better on time. Still doable. Definitely want to go for the health extension in this level. There's like timings on things, little delays that don't feel right. Oh yeah, man, every little discrepancy like that is weird. And the fact that the tiles don't even shake there. To let you know that it's loose. Yeah, the timing, the tiles fall slower there. Lots of little bits and pieces that aren't quite right, but I'm pretty sure this was made... I don't remember when the source code for the original was released, but I'm sure it must have been after this. You know, I don't know to what extent you could reverse engineer, you know, binaries from other versions, but they didn't have the source code, at least. So if it's essentially eyeballed, then, you know, guy who made this did a better job than certainly some people who were paid to do it. All right, I just ran over the switch, I guess. Cool. What? I'm sorry? This switch just not functional? Is the door not functional? Can't scoot through this. Okay. This port seems to have some potential issues here. Source code was released in 2012. That's interesting. That means that the Commodore 64 version was also not based on the original source. It's kind of surprising. Okay, well, this is a first. I haven't seen this in any version we've played. Here I was getting all excited that we were actually doing pretty well here. The R key doesn't just restart the level. That's good, I guess, but we just have to... Let's see how much trouble I... Oh, there we go. I was gonna say, let's see how much trouble I have with this if I try to get hit deliberately. Hold the button. Yeah. If we get stuck there because of that would be very funny. Like, we just can't get further into this game because that switch just doesn't work. I mean, it would be a shame because I would want to see it through, but it would be a very, very amusing way for things to break. So I am sort of curious if I can drop down here, like in the Master System version, and just skip to the ending, but I'm pretty sure that won't work. Well, it shouldn't work, but I don't know if that's a metric we can reliably use. Even like jumping through these just doesn't feel right. So if this switch is like non-functioning again, then I don't really know. Well, I mean, I don't know if we can have other dumps of this. I guess I did get a password. I didn't make note of it, but maybe one of you industrious viewers can rewind the VOD and find the last password. Because it doesn't give me the password if I do this. I don't know if there's any other keys. I don't have like a manual or anything. It's very funny how close it'll let me get to get through this before it'll stop me. Because this does not look promising. Okay, so that's supposed to land on a switch that closes this door. I get... No, okay, cool. The run is alive. We don't get to get the health extension, but we just take the Master System shortcut of just fucking skipping half the level. Sure. I do like here that the actual slow fall looks slow. Maybe it's cursed. I mean... That's a very unique kind of curse that we haven't come across in this or any other version before or since. Oh, damn. Mouse is pretty speedy. What's up, MP83? Got us to BJ Dix. I just realized that I don't even know if I can pause. I'm presuming there's some pause functionality in the emulator, but I don't know what the key or shortcut is. So we'll just keep going. I am a little annoyed that we couldn't get the extra health on level 7. But we could skip half the level, which allowed us to actually complete the level. So, you know, there's that. This layout's different. Okay, I'm not... The specific positioning for drinking potions is also a little funny here. There's like a lot of these minor things. That that was weird. But you might not pick up on, if you're not an experienced player, there's a lot of little things that just intuitively do not behave. Like, I can't necessarily specify exactly how it's wrong or how it should be. Run, please. But I can tell that it's off. Thanks, opponent. Appreciate that. Newcomb, greetings. Can I make this jump? Nice. This is going to be very interesting because I have a feeling I just get like stuck. The running inputs just like don't work sometimes. When you're running along that upper path, the way you're... Yeah, see, that's like... This is generally kind of the hardest level in the game. And... because there's a few like sort of timed bits and you have to make max distance running jumps. And it's also... it's a long stage with perils right up through the very end. And it's sort of... oh my god. That's not how that's supposed to work. I pressed the right key like 2 or 3 times and nothing happened, and then I held it. And then I just zero framed, impaled myself on the spikes. Like, you can impale yourself in sort of unexpected ways. But typically, like, you should generally be safe. If you're standing by the spikes, like, they should only kill you if you are running at speed. So beginning to run or stopping on the spikes should generally be safe. But in some versions, like we just saw, like just attempting to start a run can just like get you impaled instantly. Oh, like the inputs don't buffer. So like if you stop and you want to jump as soon as you're stopped, like you have to wait for him to come to a full stop and wait another additional beat. And then you can start pressing. Like, it doesn't register inputs when you're sort of stopping. And that's tripping me up for sure. It, you know, it controls pretty well otherwise. Not perfect, but not the worst. But like there, if I want to run as soon as I can after landing from that jump, you know what? Let's do this. He still turns around. Okay. Not correct. So this looks a bit fucked up. Again, because of... yeah, I'm not supposed to be able to do that. Like, that should be a required running jump. It's kind of weird here. You can, like, in the original, you can pick up potions from quite some distance away. But here, you kind of have to... you can pick it up if you're on the same tile, whether you're sort of behind or in front of the bottle. Which I don't mind it. It's like, it kind of makes more sense intuitively, the way it is here. But it's not the same. Okay, here's the big test. You're supposed to just be able to hold right, or left, rather. Well, that doesn't work. I figured it wouldn't work because of the tile difference, the obstacles are spaced differently. Or to say this, I wasn't expecting it to not work, but I was expecting that it wouldn't behave like in the original. So And the reason I wouldn't expect that is because, again, the number of tiles per screen is not consistent. So essentially every screen has some like little changes to account for. I'm trying to... I guess you can't turn around if you hold a space. Yeah, you can't turn around if you hold a action key. That's strange. So every screen's layout is modified to like fit with one less tile. And in most rooms, you wouldn't necessarily notice because, you know, there's going to be room for things to be truncated. And if there's no specific details that are missing, it's not that noticeable. But in some screens, it does mean that there's enough obstacles or things are placed such... Like this is a good example where you need to have a gap that's a certain width and you're supposed to have platforms on either side. And you wouldn't necessarily mentally map the size and proportion of everything on screen, but you might know how long the gap is supposed to be and how wide the platforms are supposed to be. And one of those things being off by one tile is like a pretty noticeable difference. And here, with the jaw traps, like there's supposed to be a certain amount of space in between them, which now is different. But here, again, like there's supposed to be a wide enough gap that I can't do that, but I'm also supposed to land on like a loose tile. Kind of weird. And then on top of that, of course, I don't trust that the traps have the same timing. So in the original game, I don't know if it's happenstance or it was by design, but the timing and spacing of the traps are such that if you run at full speed, you will just run through them. Yeah, and this seems to be perfectly timed for you to not be able to save time at all. Like, you have to stop. Which actually is interesting. It means that, I guess in this version, it is strategically advantageous for us to try to kill the guard on the switch. Oh my god, and I just unsheathed my sword. Or sheathed it. Well, okay, that sucks. At least we didn't waste more time on that attempt. But that means that screen boundaries are very fucked in combat, because I have to assume... Now, to clarify, normally combat's supposed to persist between screen transitions. Like in that situation, I would keep my sword out and I could, like, enemies can chase you. If you get pushed out of the screen, you're still in combat and you can attack through the screen transition, or the screen border, I guess. I don't know how I mistimed that and got killed, but here we are, getting flustered here and making mistakes. But given the fact that I was pushed across the screen border and it made me exit combat, I have to assume that if I push an enemy off screen, the same thing would happen. Now, generally speaking, switch, please. What the fuck? Well, there's a loose tile here, I guess. Are you for real? Can I fucking drop this tile, or is it just like a joke loose tile? It's not actually loose? What's going on here? Okay, we're doing this, I guess. Ever so slightly coming apart at the seams, this port. But yeah, so in general, it's not necessarily advisable to to take a fight across multiple screens, if only because you obviously have a much harder time telling like what's happening and where people are. It just stopped working. What are the chances this is a bad dump? Above 0, for sure. Above 0. And I said that when we started. Like, I have a couple of different dumps. I don't know if they're different. I don't know what's up. We just have to try our best. But given that we do have passwords, we could try. That's the thing, like, I wanted to kind of move pretty swiftly today. So I would prefer not to have to do multiple playthroughs. Excuse me. But it kind of looks like we're not having much more luck with this at this point. So, you know, passwords should carry over. I was able to grab that. That's interesting. Weird how that works. It's very strange that it worked like a couple of times and then that switch just stopped working. The ways in which this is breaking is never before been seen. Right, okay. Well, I don't really feel like wasting more time on this. Doing this level over and over for another 20 minutes, hoping that it's going to start working. It's kind of weird. So if someone can help dig up the password. We had the password that was what, BJ Dick B, but I think that was for. Actually, that might have been for this levels. Whatever, it'll work if we don't have another password. Oh, you have the one for level 7 OFC DDK. Oh, that's good enough. Well, I say that's good enough, but I guess that depends on. Level 7 is still broken. Let's try to open a different dump. This is a different form. I guess this is a tape. Let's see how this works. But I'm assuming load times are going to be truncated. I haven't done much ZX Spectrum emulation, so I'm not really sure what to expect. Oh, so that was the level 8 password. I mean, great. Let me. Okay, yeah. So there's an option called Fast Tape Loader that's enabled. Maybe I should spacebar just in case. So the other versions have like 4 dumps, I think. I think this is the only one that was a tape format. Let's go with the. Let's see. They're all like different file sizes too, which has me a little confused. Here's one that's dated 1995. I guess it's also just not. So when I did the same thing with the other file, it just booted, and now it's just not doing it. All right, let's There's one that's 250 kilobytes instead of 640. I'm doing the same thing. Let me just, if I try to open the original one. Okay, no, it's okay. Let me restart the emulator. Okay, yeah, there we go. Another world. Hello, everybody. Now I give you cool arcade game, Prince of Persia by Nicodim. Warning. Not much of German, that, or German, Russian rather. That's fine. Okay, cheat keys in game. CS to skip level. I don't know what key that is. Z to restore energy. X to restore time. C to kill enemy. Version especially for everybody. Good. That includes me. MC software, yeah, different release. Well, that might have been what was supposed to be there. And the other group put their name there instead. I'm just curious to see if there's... like, if they translated the text or did something. Nope. Alright. I guess this should let us enter a password. Oh, okay. I was expecting to fall because I thought this was level 7. Alright, that's not an incredibly great sign. Let's try again. We do have the one that's smaller. I mean, I didn't try resetting the emulator before loading the tape version. That could have broken something. Not that I have any particular reason to think that that version is going to work better. But I am curious to boot it up again. Just to see if it behaves any differently. I think if nothing else, we're getting the authentic European microcomputer experience here. Supposedly the Thomas Kaz dump is optimized and bug-fixed tape version. I want to say that I got this from My Abandonware, so it's just like a zip file with a bunch of random dumps. But I do have... I have a link here. Let's see. On World of Spectrum. Doesn't really say... I have, okay, there's something here called a disk image that it's labeled as original release. And then there's another tap image. I'll grab it and we'll see if I can see the text file. All right, whatever. The README has some kind of troubleshooting help looking stuff. All right, let's try that image instead. I'm going to reboot the emulator. And we'll try POPersia.tap. I was looking at the README for 2 seconds there, mostly to see if that name showed up MP83, to see if it's the dump. in question, but I couldn't see, at least just skimming, I didn't see the name. It doesn't look like it's breaking. Now, of course, I also don't know. I'm running this in an emulator called Specky. Whatever testing I would have done with different emulators would have been done years, or at the very least months ago. So I don't have any fresh recollections. But like I said, it has an option for fast tape loading that's enabled, but I don't know how fast is defined exactly. Thanks. Let me take a look there and see if that. Right. Yeah, I've grabbed some stuff from here as well in the past. Okay, we're making progress. Yeah, it seems pretty. There's a lot of information to be found for sure. We'll see. I'm being asked for a. Can't type at least. Press space. I don't mind like a startup load, but if it's going to be a long load on each death or between levels, like that's probably going to be a little annoying. But yeah, like it's frustrating that we got that first version to work and then it sort of is a bit busted. I am like I'm very glad. Like I've like I said, I've been to this unofficial website before, and there's a lot of great resources. And I would kind of have wanted to play this, not having like gone through all of that in detail first. But I'm thinking now, maybe, like I said, I kind of wanted things to, you know, keep things moving today. So I'm not really thrilled about the idea of sitting here and doing a bunch of technical troubleshooting to get this up and running, and then spend another hour trying to play it. But I'm also like, you know, we gave it a reasonably fair shake. Technically not quite an hour if we, you know, take into account the wait time for trying to replay it and everything. Let's see, we don't have to necessarily give up entirely, but I am curious to see if this... I'm a little mixed up now. I'm unsure if we actually tried all the dumps I had yet. Yeah, no, we didn't boot this up before. Got some more unique art and crack-tro music. Good, you are right. Read this not stupid scroll. And then press long key. Is that the space bar? Is that the long key? Now you may press keys O and P or change this scroll speed. Keys Q. Oh, I slowed it down. Q and A. Right scroll. Okay. Russian. Alright. I pressed the long key. Well, we got this far at least. Let's see how this works. The thing is, like, even the build we were playing, I guess, you know, we could always go back to that and restart it, because this door worked at first, and then just stopped working. Or the switch, rather. It wasn't even that the door, like, wouldn't, or the switch wouldn't work in that dump, it just worked and then it didn't. So we don't know that this dump is any better. It's not yet demonstrating any behavioral differences, given that the other version also didn't break at first. Can I jump from here? Should be able to, yeah. 28 minutes left. This will be tricky. Now, not being able to run immediately after jumping is sort of infuriating. If we can get the guy to die on the switch, that would be swell. Honestly, though, as far as getting through this part with the timed switch and the traps and everything, I'm just so used to doing it the one way where you just run that I don't have a great sense of how tight the timing window is. Just that if you just run without stopping, it's not a problem. Of course, there's no reason to expect timing windows to, like, be faithful in this version anyway. So I'll try and see if I can push him onto the switch. I'll try to be aggressive. But whether that actually works... you can't turn around when you hold the action key. Okay, good. We got it. He's on the switch. Assuming, of course, that that works the way it should. Why is that door closed? This door shouldn't be closed. This is the door that the switch opens. Can't climb up here. Did him dying on the switch have the opposite effect? Somehow? That looks like a switch above the trap. Maybe the switch only opens... Okay, and now he's no longer on the switch. Well, it's a good thing that opened. But I'm trying to climb up here. Yeah, okay. They changed it. And now there's a switch here. Okay, they just, like, fully babyfied it. I gotta wait a while before climbing up here or I'll collide with the gate. It's most certainly differently fucked. Now this... Well, okay. So there's... Oh my god! Oh my god! I tapped the left key. But... Okay. Alright, I just learned new tech. If you tap a direction and hold space, he will just keep running. I wanted to run one step and then do, like, a little sneaky step. So he just kept running instead. But now I'm wondering if we could actually maybe just safely redo this? Well, that might be... Okay. I wasn't sure if I would somehow land on the spikes there. I have to remind myself that... Okay, now he's on the switch again. I have to remind myself that my intuition is not to be trusted, given how different things might be. That's just gonna open up, and now the switch is not down. The door's just like not gonna stay open. I guess there must be something with like the persistence of doors across screens that doesn't work in this version. Fuck off, I didn't even start running. So they like move switches around because puzzles that rely on you opening a switch for a door like multiple screens away like doesn't work because they're not kept in memory, I guess. If that's the case, it's like sort of novel that it hasn't really been that noticeable until now. But it's also definitely messing with a lot of puzzles, I feel like. I guess it was kind of the same thing that happened with the spikes before that, where I wasn't running, but somehow, like, holding the movement key, the character hadn't started moving, but he went from, like, 0 to 60 in one frame, and the game just treated him as fully in motion, despite it not having actually started to move. Getting me caught on the spikes, or in that instance, extending my hurt box into the jaw trap. So what I wanted to try to do when I was up there was to walk up to the ledge, do a standing forward jump, expecting to land on a loose tile, which may not even be a loose tile in this version. No way to know until we land on it. And then grab that. And then just expect to be able to land on that loose tile and get off of it before it falls down, which is not a thing you are supposed to be able to do, but we did do that consistently on level 4. So I'm just going to trust that either that tile isn't loose, or we'll have time to move away from it. Because the thing is, I know for a fact that it's going to be awkward, if not impossible, to try to get enough room there for a running jump. Like in the DOS version, even if you have a closed gate behind you, you can still, like, there's enough room to get the full 3 tiles worth of run up for your jump. But here, if there's a wall or a gate in front of us, you can't really use that. And I can't tell when I'm going through a gate like that if I'm sufficiently towards the edge of that tile. The door is also fucking with the speed of the traps. Oh my god, I believe I got through there. See, that's not a loose tile either. I didn't even need to do a running jump there. So here, like, yeah, there's just, I don't trust that there's enough room. See, I could still do that. I could probably have run, but I panicked a little bit. I'm going to wait for the door to finish opening, because it's going to change the game speed. Thought it would anyway. I fucking knew it. Ah. So that's like a combination of factors there where there's one tile less of space, guards being pretty antsy to get close and start fighting. My dude is waiting just like a little bit longer to actually draw his sword. What I would expect to happen there was to have been at least in the beginning stages of the drawing your sword animation, which if you get hit out of the animation of drawing your sword, you don't get killed instantly. It's only if you're like fully not even beginning to engage combat, where you get killed in one hit. Man, the jaw traps are like the MVP of this version. They're getting a lot of work done, because stepping through them is very strange. Also frustrating that we were like, it's always frustrating when you get like pretty far on one attempt and then you spend multiple attempts failing to replicate even that partial success, because it makes you feel like you should have already like gotten past that hurdle. Not a great feeling. I always forget which screens you have to like stop and fight. I want to say that there's at least some screen here with spikes that also aren't here in this version. But this level is like a prime example of not having at all like a mental map of the actual layout, but just remembering the sort of general steps and what happens from one screen to the next, but not like in sequence, the screens like first this, then this, then this. I couldn't tell you which screens have a fight or which screens have a spike trap or whatever. I always have to like step through it carefully. What? Oh my god, I can't believe I ran like 3 tiles into that screen. I thought I was careful not to do that. Like letting go well in advance to do exactly that. Again, my instincts and intuition getting me killed. It is interesting though, because I think of all the versions that have like mechanical differences, like specific tangible mechanical differences that you can point out, there is an argument to be made for this one having like the most subtle differences. On paper, it gets a lot of it right, but it's more like the specifics of timing of certain things and how inputs are registered, the sort of lack of a buffer or queue for inputs. Which isn't like a necessity to play, but it does make it feel a little more stiff and unresponsive. Like here, where I can't run despite holding the key because I started holding the key like 1/4 of a second too soon. So it isn't really like, with the exception of the blocking being very difficult, and to my ability, like I can't seem to, like, it seems to me that counters are not in the game because the enemies never do them either. But as far as the platforming goes, and as far as like the obstacles and like everything outside of combat, there isn't necessarily a lot of things, if at all, that are like, here is a specific rule that is not being obeyed, or here's the thing that just doesn't function the way it should. I mean, there isn't nothing like that. Like, being able to walk off of falling platforms is kind of a weird one. But it's more, I guess, like level layouts are all a little different because of the screen space, and there are things like the certain loose tiles not being loose anymore, and switches being moved around to be on the same screen as the door they're opening and what have you. So, like, it's absolutely not the case that this version has fewer differences, or maybe not even smaller differences, but they're kind of more subtle differences. That still on the whole makes this feel more faithful than something like the Sam Coupe version or the Game Boy version. Okay. Okay. Played out a little different than expected. I regret to inform you, Mr. Coleman Filter, that our shadow looks exactly the same as us. Which is a genuine disappointment, because I thought that they would be able to do some weird transparency thing. Because the whole thing with, I mean, I'm sure the Apple II, like, graphics data format would all be different. But the whole idea, obviously, is like, without using additional graphics data, they could have another character. But in that version, he's this like shimmering sort of outline, and he is like transparent. And they replicated that in the DOS version, but I'm guessing that it is just a separate set of graphics in the DOS version. Because I don't know if it would be possible to replicate the same effect with just sort of palette tricks or what have you. So I guess the same would be true here. I don't know, but it's always a little disappointing when he looks the same. Terrifying. So normally there's a switch right before the door here that closes it. But this version doesn't have hidden switches, I guess. So there are mechanics like that that are just flat out missing. Oh boy. Move, please. There we go. But you know, for a fan effort in 1996, I mean, it's definitely impressive. Like I said, it's in many ways more faithful and a better game experience than several of the official commercially released versions. Move, please. But also, I guess it is fair to say that some of the ways in which it is stiff and weird and unresponsive and bad are distinct from other versions, which I suppose is to be expected. None of those are necessarily the exact same as each other either. You know what? Let's not needlessly risk things with a awkward jump. Whew. Well, like I said, that is generally what I would consider the most difficult level in the game. We're at 20-something minutes. If things go fully smooth from here, JBD EBKM. This could be doable, but we're short like one or two HP. Then again, fights are a little different and mostly kind of chill in this version. It looks kind of different. They have the extra like bit of solid wall there. But yeah, like I have to do that step through the trap, because if I run through it, I would get close enough to the guy that he will likely kill me before I can get my sword out. That's definitely a bit weird. But that's at least something you can adapt to in terms of strategy. $10 left, okay. I guess we spent more time there and then I realized. Unsurprising, we had a pretty rough level 8. That means we are pretty much guaranteed to not make it. There's no switch there. Kind of weird. Yeah, that extra delay before he draws his sword is also like... It makes a difference for sure. And again, it compounds the issue with the every screen being like a little bit too narrow. I shouldn't say too narrow, but more narrow than it was originally. I can't trust my ability to do a running jump across here for sure. But I guess I can just, yeah, just run through there. Switch there now. Oh my god. I did the same thing I did on level 8, where I tapped the direction key to run as short as possible. Then I preemptively started holding the spacebar to do a careful step once I had stopped running. But whether or not you are holding a directional key, if the character is running and you start holding the spacebar, he doesn't stop until you let go of the spacebar. That is a very peculiar behavior that is not in other versions of this game. Peculiar may or may not be a nice way of saying it's kind of fucked up. I did the same thing and I'm, oh my god. It's very hard, like, it's a hard thing to untrain. Because basically, in other versions of this game, holding the action key is like how you stay safe, basically. Like, if you do make a jump like this, and you're not sure if you're quite going to make it, you hold the action key to make sure that you grab the ledge if you need to. No loose tiles here. If you're standing still and you hold the action key and you press the opposite direction of where you're standing, you'll turn around, but you know that there's no risk of you accidentally running in the opposite direction because you can't start running when you hold it. Well, this looks a little weird. So here it's like the opposite. When you have the action key held down, you cannot turn around. Like if you're already running, it doesn't normally have any effect. But it's, you just know that as soon as you stop, like you're safe basically. Okay, so there was a okay. The graphics up top there are very confusing. I thought that was a wall. I guess it looks the okay. So there's the second floor there. The middle floor there's a wall. Okay, so we're seeing like the backs of pillars. Okay. Fuck! I couldn't see where I was standing. I didn't realize I was in the middle of that tile. I thought I was at the edge of it. That was my bad for being careless, I guess. I think it's unlikely we will have time to finish this level anyway. Well, if we get through here correctly the first time, maybe we'll have time to make it to the upside down potion. So I'm obviously quite impressed with this effort. If I was like a Spectrum enthusiast, I think this is a cool thing to play around with. It's not unplayable to the point where I would be against the idea of completing it, like learning to do it in a single run. But it doesn't really have enough positive or interesting things that are kind of unique to it for me to justify you know, spending more time on this version over any other. Oh my god, I'm very glad he was being polite there. That could easily have gotten me killed. You know, for the purposes of this project, I'm excited and happy to check it out, but you know, it's not going to be a version that I'm going to be returning to with any frequency. It's got, you know, something like the Atari ST version may have slowdown and other things that make it like less than ideal, or even the Apple II version for that matter. But they have a unique appeal. And you can say the same for this, like, as far as being, I wonder if you could actually make a running jump across there. That would be hilarious. If I was more of an enthusiast for the Spectrum, I'm sure I might feel differently. So it's cool for what it is. But honestly, I don't think it quite lived up to my lofty expectations of what I would want, like a passion project like this to be. Like it's still, I think it's fair to say that it's more faithful and accurate than some of the official versions. But it also has some issues that I don't think can be chalked up to like technical limitations. Yeah, that worked. Basically, I had to start jumping during the screen transition. It's interesting, though, that the source code was released in 2012, because the Commodore 64 version was 2011. So that must not have used the source code either. Hey, there we go. That was a little weird. I didn't take damage. Wait, I didn't mean to drop down. Already getting orientationally challenged here. I like my health bar is white now that it's up there. But since the source code was... Okay, so down is still... That's right, there's no actual real danger here, it just wastes a bit of time. The BBC Micro and Atari 8-bit versions... and now there's enemy and player health colors up. Like the colors got offset, they didn't quite flip properly. Now the time color gets... That's pretty funny. That got all messed up. Well, I mean, technical limitations are a factor, of course. There are definitely things in this version that I would likely attribute to technical limitations, even if it's, you know, more impressive than an official release in like 1989 or 1990 likely would have been. Fucking jaw traps, dude. like the lack of like certain screens having simplified layouts with fewer moving objects and things like that. But the controls, like not being able to buffer inputs and things like that, I have to assume is not because you couldn't do that on a Spectrum. As far as flipping the screen, you'd have to ask someone who could answer technical questions, which is not me. We have the second countdown, that's cool. But it was kind of repeating a trick that Mechner had used in Karateka, where just as a joke, if you insert the B side of the Karateka floppy, you can play the game, but it's upside down. Prince of Persia does use both sides of a floppy, but the upside down sort of trick still remains as this little potion trap, I guess you could call it. Alright, we got that guy at least. Well, I'm glad we at least were able to get the full a full run, we can call it, stop the timer. Yeah, an impressive effort, but not as good as I would have hoped. I would describe this as a novelty, but not really recommended unless you are a particularly... Like, if you are a large enough Prince of Persia fan or a large enough ZX Spectrum enthusiast to know that you are interested in this, then I guess I would recommend that you check it out. If you're the kind of person who know that you're interested without a recommendation, then I wouldn't advise you to not take a look at it. But outside of those niches, I don't think I could really recommend this. But there we go. Like I said, I wanted to try to keep things a little snappy, and I've already been live for more than 2 hours. So let's do that. Let's shut it down. And bring up the old game list. And I was admittedly hoping that we would break the streak here. But alas, another skull for the ZX Spectrum version. And as far as a review of this version, it's a little tricky. It's like okay, but it's really... It's not as good as I would want it to be. Obviously, we had a little bit of technical issues, but even that notwithstanding, there were switches that stopped working, and through sheer luck, sort of, we could repeat our Master System trick of just skipping half of level 7. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Ever was made, but it's not perfect. It's very far from perfect. Maybe it's about as good as you could expect from the Spectrum. I'm not sure. But like I said, the things that make me sort of frustrated with it are mostly not of a technical nature. When I say that it's not as bad as some commercially released versions, I mean that it's not as bad as the Sam Coupe version, not as bad as the Game Boy version, but it's not nearly as good as any of the actual good versions. So I think, yeah, I think we can go with this. I'm more disappointed than anything. I had high hopes for it, and I think there are parts of it that I think are cool. It's interesting to look at how they got things working, and like for a Spectrum game, it's like nice to look at. I think visually they replicated the game well, and like it mostly functions correctly, but there's many things that aren't quite right, and they compound in a way that makes for a sort of unsatisfying experience to me. It's cool that it exists, but it's, for me, it's like I find it impossible to not wish it was better. It's just a little too. In a way, you know, it's a little bit like my experience with the Mega Drive version, where I may have an inflatedly positive look at it because I want it to be good. They're not really comparable, because the Mega Drive version specifically has a lot of things that I genuinely really like about it, but it's just frustrating where it's broken. Whereas this is like, I want to root for it, but where the Spectrum version succeeds, it is still really merely adequate. It doesn't really rise above adequacy at any point. Which, I mean, for a Spectrum game, that's probably about what you could expect. But you know, if it's this is, I'm saying if, I don't know, but if it's not possible for the Spectrum to do a proper version of it, then it, you know, then that's that. Doesn't, it's doing about as good a job as it can, doesn't in itself, you know, preclude it from being insufficiently good. It's a cool effort for sure, and I'd rather play it than the Sam Coupe version, no doubt. But I would rather play it than the Game Boy version, no doubt. But it's struggling to rank above any of the other like bad versions for me. I mean, I would probably recommend it over the Master System version. If you imagine some kind of weird space alien type situation in which I were to recommend versions of Prince of Persia and the choice somehow is between the Master System and the ZX Spectrum version, then yeah, I would probably recommend the Spectrum version over it, even if I prefer the Master System version, or kind of felt like I had more fun with it. But it's a highly specific case. I'm a highly specific case, but you know, choosing between versions like that, it's not really, I don't think that's a situation that's going to come up for a lot of people. So I wanted it to be better. It's cool for what it is. I'm very glad that it exists. It's a fun part of this game's history. But at the end of the day, to me, it's a novelty. It's a novelty as a Prince of Persia fan. And if I was a Spectrum fan or Spectrum enthusiast, I would feel like it's kind of a novelty, because I'm sure there are plenty of games on the Spectrum, whether commercially released or not, that are more genuinely fun to play without a lot of these caveats for, oh, you know, it's cool for what it is, or it's neat that it exists, or all that stuff. The Master System version has probably the most broken like movement and physics and animation of all versions. It's not a good port by any stretch. I was just somehow able to finagle it into, you know, enabling me to have a fun time. I went into it based on prior experience with the full expectation of it being the worst version that I could not under any circumstances recommend to anyone. And that perspective has like been gently nudged in a vaguely more positive direction, but not by far. Like, it's still a train wreck, but it's a train wreck that you can kind of wrestle into submission. Whereas the Sam Coupe and Game Boy versions are not that. And like I said, you know, I am under the impression that the Game Boy Color version, which we will embark on momentarily, has a lot of shared DNA with that Game Boy version. So we might be about to find out what a truly busted ass version of Prince of Persia looks like. But I'm going to need to take a short break before we do that. I'll step aside for a couple of minutes, stretch, go to the bathroom, and what have you, and I'll be back shortly with the next game on the list. See you guys in just a little bit.
Phew!
All right, I returned. Let me get some kind of controller device here. My bootleg Retrobit NES controller should do fine for a Game Boy. Let me just connect this. And let's update the game information. We are going to be playing the Game Boy Color version. It looks like this, published by Red Orb Entertainment or something like that. Weird kind of goofy adaptation of the artwork from the Mac version. But hey, not the worst. I mean, it's not good, but not the worst Prince of Persia cover we've ever seen, I don't think. So we're up to 19. Game Boy Color, released in 1999. Developed by Magnin and Associates. Can I spell? Hopefully. What's up, Lomasar? Ready for action? Is anyone ready for Game Boy Color Prince of Persia? I don't know. I mean, it would be great if all my misgivings are completely misplaced, but we shall see. I don't have too much more to say about this, really. So, let's get going, shall we? Oh yeah, let me fix this. It should not be 4x3. There we go. So I wasn't sure at the time, or I thought that, or to put it this way, I had never taken it for granted that this version and the original Game Boy release necessarily had much in common. Because why would you assume that, you know? Ported, or, you know, published maybe by different companies, several years apart. Like, if you can think of another game that had a... Like, just in general, conceptually, if you think of a game that came out for the Game Boy in '92, and the same game had a port on the Game Boy Color in 1999, and it was, you know, something that was licensed by someone to be ported, you wouldn't necessarily take for granted that it's the same game colorized. Because the... let me look at my notes here. The Game Boy game was published by Virgin Games. And the developer... Like, it was some kind of Virgin Games team that made that port. This game was developed by a company called Magnan and Associates. It was published by Red Orb. Even Broderbund, like there's a copyright in the beginning where it talks about the Learning Company, and because the Learning Company had acquired Broderbund at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So at a surface level, there does not appear to be any immediate overlap, right? But as I looked into it a little bit closer when I was trying to piece together just like who do I attribute to these different ports and whatnot, I did learn that the company Magnan and Associates, founded by one Ed Magnan, was the lead programmer not just of this release but also of the original Game Boy Prince of Persia. As was pointed out, Tommy Tallarico has a music credit on this, as he did on the Game Boy version, which, by the way, was the game that he worked on, in which he takes credit for coming up with the concept of only playing little musical stings here and there instead of having looping background music. That's Tommy Tallarico's original invention, according to him. But yeah, so this version looks kind of neat because it's sort of like the colorization of the characters is kind of like the DOS version. But that one language select screen is identical to the original Game Boy version. So is this. The fact that she doesn't have a proper room. I'd forgotten about that. She's just standing in this weirdly pinkish purple miscolored version of the palace tile set. So broadly speaking, of course, the idea of like a colorized... Oh, right, I forgot about this. The timer in the Game Boy version doesn't start when the game starts. The timer's been running already. That's why it's at 58 minutes. So yeah, like generally, if a game came out on Game Boy and there's a separate Game Boy Color version, yeah, you would kind of expect that it's the same game with colors. Kind of like how if, you know, there's a Mega Drive game and there's a Mega CD release a year later, you would expect it to be mostly the same game with some enhancements. But it was just the whole developer and publisher situation that sort of obfuscated the fact that it would be the case. And also, you know, given that it's like 7 years in between, which is a bit of a gap. But yeah, so far, this does appear to be essentially identical to the original Game Boy release, except now there's color. Oh, that's right. I just tap right to go to new game. You don't actually control it. So level 1, 57 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna F10. Is that reset? Yeah. So we gotta hurry up to get through the. We gotta get to the title screen and get through the intro more quickly. I mean, this screen looks quite nice. I wonder if they changed the position of the language, because I could swear I was in a hurry and accidentally picked German or something when we played it before. Alright, here we go. I do recall this being pretty fucked. Alright, so the tapping the B button makes you step forward. Yeah, okay, he's falling very slowly. Doors open instantly, right? Okay, seems like you can do a running jump after like a tile and a half. Physics of all the movements definitely messed up, but it's like snappier and more responsive than the Spectrum version. Yeah, I think Francais was blocked by a foreground pillar. Right, so yeah, the way you sort of slip past the edge of a tile onto the next one and stuff like that, that's like not great. He's like, it's funny. In the Spectrum version, he was like weirdly stiff. But here he's like more slippery than you would expect. But it doesn't seem like you're fully sort of locked to the center of the tile, which I remember, like, thought that was the experience I had with the original Game Boy version. Oh, that's right. Jumping doesn't actually move you forward. That's so funny. The loose tiles drop like really slowly in the Spectrum version. Yeah, stuff like you're supposed to be able to step up to the edge there without dropping a loose tile or even touching the next tile. But you can't really do that. Like you overshoot where you're supposed to stand and slip into the next tile. Like it's very sort of slippery. Can I pull out a sword, please? Maybe? There we go. A to attack, B to block. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy! I'm mashing so hard and... Okay. Collisions appear to be a rough suggestion. Of course I gotta do this. Can I... Oh my god, can I grab the ledge? Oh. That's right, it doesn't... I'm like getting worked up. This screen is so messed up looking. I am curious if this is just the color palette for the Palace tile set. Ooh, I was gonna say, or maybe we get different colors. But here, even level 2 is a different color. That's awesome. I genuinely like that. These guys are like way taller than me. Which is kind of a neat idea, even if it's probably accidental. Oh my god, it's so unbelievably unresponsive. Holy shit. Combat is gonna be rough. Like, you move pretty... well, forward at least you move pretty rapidly. See? Oh, the hitboxes in combat are so scuffed. It's just unbelievable. Like, once we have... okay, sure. Once we have a bit more extra health, it could be a little more manageable. Oh. Sure, let's just wave the sword right through them. Okay, this... It's funny. I remember the Game Boy version being, like, Omega scuffed. I didn't remember it having literally the most broken combat of any version. But, I mean... I'm not saying I'm surprised by it. In the NES version, it's kind of funny because... Oh my god, I forgot about this. Holy shit, they added the thing where you run into a wall and you just bang your head on it and you do a stupid little animation. Of course, I'm like calibrated to the Spectrum version where you have to hold your jump like 1.5 tiles early, and in this one it's like the complete opposite. You don't, like, you jump much sooner than you're supposed to. In the NES version, there's this thing where if you're in the middle of attacking, you can't take damage, basically. Or maybe it's the Master System that was like that. It might be the Master System version. Here it's like the enemies have that, except I guess it also works when they're standing idle. My sword just won't make contact with them. Surprising absolutely no one. There's no counterattacks in this one. How are so many ports just missing that feature of the game? It's like missing a third of the combat system. I don't think there's a way for me to communicate just how unresponsive these controls are either. It's like the game is polling for inputs about once a second. It's just unbelievable. I can immediately like see, like, yep, I can see why I went for the furious emoji for the Game Boy version, because it's all kind of bubbling up to the surface here again. Alright, I'm having incredible combat luck now. Yeah, and I want to say that like the instant doors fuck up some of the puzzles too, basically. That's right. Crouching doesn't push me forward, so I can't... The sword, please. Yep. Yeah, you get weird trades like that somehow where you don't get pushed back. Guess this is the health. Okay. The other one is a poison. At least it's supposed to be. Deal with this guy. Can I please have a sword? Yeah, okay. Can I? Oh my god! Oh! Oh! Nothing works. Nope. 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 No. At least I landed a hit. Upsets Barra. Yeah, things are just going great. I'm just like completely exasperated by the not just the width and depth of the incompetence on display here, but like I'm just in utter bafflement how anyone could not even sign off on this, but just like arrive at this. Like, I want you to appreciate how much I'm mashing to, like, maybe get one attack to come out. defies words and logic. That's like, oh my, it feels so bad. You just attack right through the enemy, and you just stand there like an idiot, unable to do anything until he attacks you again. Your attacks just don't work half the time. Like, at least half the time, your attacks just don't connect. And it does not appear to be related to, you know, their state of animation or anything. It's like you're trying to play footsies with someone who's, like, patched hurtbox is on, like, a delay or something. It's like he's stepping forward, but his hurtbox doesn't follow until a second later. I do not understand it even a little bit. I will say this, like, for everything that's fucked up about, like, the Mega Drive version or the Master System version or the NES version, whatever, like, any other version, or the Spectrum version for that matter, that don't behave the way they're supposed to, at least, you know, what is displayed on screen matches what is happening in the game. Like, at least when the sword makes contact, the character is being hit by the sword. Okay, that's like the... How many attacks did I hit him with that didn't do anything? 4? 3 or 4? And he took 0 damage. This is, like, unbelievable. It's so funny, though, that, like... I feel like this is, like, the 4th game that I'm playing that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this being busted. But I somehow never remember that it's the combat that's, like, so fucked. Granted, I didn't really remember specifics of, like, in my memory, it was the whole thing where you can only move in full grid steps. And I think that's accurate, but I guess I had it backwards. Like, you always stand on the edge between two tiles. You don't stand in the center of a tile. You're, like, always, like, on the edge like this, or on this edge. It's still missing a great deal of granularity that's supposed to be there. And, like, the running jumps. I mean, there isn't a... Like, I can't necessarily single out the running jumps. Because it's not like anything else behaves correctly either. Jumping and crouching doesn't move you forward because it couldn't. Because the smallest... like, degree of movement is a full tile. That wouldn't make sense. I'm sure I felt similar playing the original, but rarely do I get to, like, the 13 minute 30 second mark and go, God damn it, I have to endure another 46 minutes of this, huh? And this is, like... Well, I was gonna say, this is, like, kind of the worst of it. I don't know that that's entirely true. This didn't hurt me. But... we are in a particularly bad spot with this little health. Enemies will become tougher too, sure, but Okay, that's... Well, cool. You can't push him into the pit, I guess, because he doesn't... You can switch places, which is something you can't do in some versions. But it's of limited use in a situation like that, because apparently you can't push them backwards into the pit. We do get health extension here, at least. It is a little weird, though. Looking at the screen, I have to assume that there's less max health in this version. In the original, I think there's 9 health extensions you can get for a total of 12 HP. And there clearly is not enough room for that there. Unless, you know, it starts going on 2 rows or doing something funky like that. This then. I guess you maybe you don't even have to worry about tiles falling on you in this version. Who knows? The horrifying noise of the exit door. Oh, that's right. Once the swinging animation, when you grab a ledge and you hold on to it and you start swinging, once that animation starts playing, it cannot be aborted. That is not correct behavior. So, like, if you jump and grab a ledge and immediately climb up, you just go right up instantly. But if you hold on for, like, a split second longer... Alright, purple. You can't drop or climb up. It's the same thing if I do this. Like, I jump up, grab, let go, and he's, like, swinging for another second before he drops. That's not what it's supposed to be. So honestly, with the combat being super fucking jacked and not having much hope that we will finish... Yeah, these jumps become a little different because you're so, like, sort of perfectly on the grid. It's weird how that, like, simplifies certain things, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. I don't normally go for this, but the extra health. Fucking hell. Well, okay, cool. Well, I'm not going for that then. So I guess the step doesn't protect you. I mean, of course, why would it? Because you're stepping to the edge of a tile, which means there's no room for you to stand in between those traps. I have to look at that screen again. That's unbelievable. You can see here, when I make this jump, I land at sort of the near edge of that tile, but then my momentum carries me through to the other edge of it. Your standing position is always at the edge of a tile. Whoops, wrong button. Okay. So you cannot stand between those traps. The traps are placed at the points in the grid where you can stand. So you have to get through all 3 of these in one go. That's a little weird. I feel like they had to adapt this somehow a little bit to make it work with how this game behaves. But it works, I guess. Weird. I'm just, like, impressed that I was able to get the hang of the timing. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Yeah, you can make that running jump like a tile. Well, was gonna say a tile and a half, but there's no such thing as a half tile in this, so... Please? Okay. I don't know that I can trust that there's a checkpoint here. But we'll see how fighting this guy will go. Increased clock speed do anything for this game? I don't recall if the original had any issues with slowdown or anything. I'd have to sort of compare them back to back, I guess. I think I played the original... Well, maybe not. For this project, we actually probably did play it on emulator. I was going to say, I think I probably played it on Super Game Boy. But I don't think we did, actually. So that's going to make for kind of an inaccurate comparison anyway. I don't remember it being slow or having problems like that. If anything, the weird pace and feel of this seems kind of familiar. Skeleton looks kind of different. Like the animations. Oh my god! It's so easy to switch places. Oh, actually, this is different. The original Game Boy version didn't have the skeleton, because it had like the ghost guard instead. I'm pretty sure. His little forward step he does is so cute and weird. There was for sure a version that had a ghostly skeleton, or a ghostly guard. I'm pretty sure it was the Game Boy version. Yeah, it makes sense, because the Game Boy version also doesn't have the princess's room. Like, it's very truncated graphics-wise. So they added back the skeleton, with kind of a unique-looking sprite with goofy animation. And I like the fancy title screen and everything, but it's unbelievable that they didn't change her room. Alright, Palace tile set. The terrifying pattern. I guess your facing direction determines which half of the tile border you're standing on. Fucking hate that animation. It's so stupid. Alright, we got some pre-bloodied traps here. That's cool, I guess. Yeah, because of the way that works, in a situation like that where you end up in a gap, a single tile width gap, it seems like you can always grab the ledge on the other side. You know, this isn't open. What the fuck? I guess... Wait, did I not drop that tile? I didn't. My god! Oh, we should be fine. Could open it. But this might be rough. A few more fights to get through. It's funny, because this normally is not a very difficult level. Oh, wait, what? I was gonna say, oh, there's no fight on this screen, I guess. And then I looked down and I saw the health bar. I was like, wait, no, there is an enemy here. I was like, wait, I can see like a pixel of him over there. That's a little strange. Yep, yeah, I can't push him back further. And I can't, like, infinite him against the wall like in the Super Nintendo version or anything, of course. I can't barely fucking attack him to begin with. One more fight, I think. Green here. It's kind of nice. Those were way harder to see in NES version that also had these pattern tiles. Oh! Trying to, like, step out of his range. Fucking hate this game. This specific version, mind you. So utterly infuriating. Like, that's really, like, the worst thing a Prince of Persia game can be is... Oh yeah, there is no loose tile to drop here. That's interesting. That's why I had to go back. Okay, but I can stand on that. So fucking cursed. The worst thing a Prince of Persia game can be is unpredictable, unreliable, and inconsistent. Like, the whole beauty of the original game is that it can be demanding and it can be punishing because it's utterly consistent. It's predictable. You can expect the outcome of any given situation to be the same anytime it happens. You can expect that if your sword makes contact with an enemy guard, their health bar will go down by 1. For example, you know, just to take a completely random example. In this version, you know, maybe not. It's very generous that we get to refill 2 pips of health here, but just funny in, like, I never grab these otherwise. I mean, normally you wouldn't have to fight the guard on the left to begin with, so you wouldn't have... I mean, you could have lost health from a dropping tile or you slip up, like from fall damage. But this would normally be the first combat encounter in this level. I'll be serious. This is maddening. Utterly maddening. But it is, you know, kind of nicer to look at, I guess, than the original Game Boy version. So it does have that going for it. Of course, the visuals were never my issue with that one. I think it kind of has a nice look in its own right. It's funny how the Master System version has, like, too much animation on the jaw traps. So the timing of them gets kind of weird. But here's the opposite. It's like missing a frame of animation. So it's just completely instantaneous. Like, it's fully binary. It's either open or close. Closed, I should say. So it's harder to get a feel for the rhythm. But of course, also the, you know, the timings of everything else is a little off too. Or, you know, you can't trust everything to be predictable, or that you can apply your sort of intuition based on other versions of the game as far as timing and stuff goes. So funny when, if he's in the middle of an attack, he always finishes the animation, stands there, and then he takes damage, or like then he falls over. So, I mean, I guess sometimes it can be hard to say exactly where things are, like what the discrepancies are, but they certainly add up. Or health. Oh my god! Nope, that doesn't. Oh, okay, that was lucky. I never ever grab this, but I'm fucking terrified right now. There's no more combat. But there could be some freak fall damage. I mean, I guess I take damage from the mirror anyway, so it shouldn't matter. Well, we should at least hopefully get to see what the shadow looks like. If I can get through this without getting killed. The fact that you cannot use the step to get through those traps is... like, it's not a limitation that I will suffer from that much, given that it's not typically how I would do it. Cool. But it's fucked up that you cannot do it. Hey, that's kind of cool. I don't remember if that's what he looked like in the original Game Boy version, but given that they added the skeleton, I could see that being something they sort of added. Like, you would imagine that stepping forward carefully is how you would intuitively approach traps. But that doesn't work in this one. I love that there's unique color palettes for every level. That's fucking awesome. You know, credit where it's due. That's a genuinely great touch. As far as everything else, though, not so much. The concept of, like, well, I took a step forward, I committed to that movement, so during that little timing window, I'm not able to attack. On paper, in concept, that's not objectionable. But when you take a step forward, and, you know, it takes, like, the better part of a full second, and you just stand there, and you mash the attack button, and your guy doesn't even attempt to start moving his arm. Like, the logic of that interaction goes out the window. And it makes no logical or intuitive sense why stepping forward prevented you from attacking in time. Obviously, you know, it doesn't help that it's super inconsistent. So you can't even really devise, like, heuristics or rules or logic to explain how things happen or what you might be able to expect out of combat. You just... all you can really do is fucking mash like crazy and hope for the best. Ugh. Duality of game, indeed. What's with all these versions of having this weird delay before you draw your sword? Fuck off! Like, the attack just not connecting, it feels so bad. And that's the thing, like, the game having, like, multiple separate issues, all of which are a problem on their own. Maybe, literally about to say, maybe I should just play more defensively, and whenever they block, I'll just stand there and kind of preemptively parry. Literally, as I was about to utter that sentence, my parry didn't come out and I got hit. But, like, Mega Offensive Rushdown does not appear to be very effective. So... well, at least I didn't instantly die there. That was kind of cool. Like, that's what I would have expected to happen in any other version. I think there might be health down here. I think there is. Couldn't remember if there was one more fight. Alright, a little bit lucky there. Lucky break. Stage 6. We're kinda sorta making up a little bit for lost time, but I don't think it's gonna be enough. I do not remember how far we made it in the original one. It would have been fun to take note on the game list how far we got, but we'll late to start that now, I guess. It is funny, though, how in this version... well, the Game Boy version in general, I guess I should say. The actual sort of foreground tiles are the same in the dungeon and palace tile sets. It's just like the floor and decorations that are different. But with the colorization here, that's like less noticeable. Like it still makes for a larger visual distinction between levels. But it doesn't really... Obviously in the original Game Boy, that's more noticeable because, you know, there aren't different color palettes. Well, very technically, I guess there might be, but they look the same. Well, it's a short level at least. But you can kind of see here, they kind of... You could easily imagine, at least, if you didn't realize that these are the same stone walls as in the dungeon. See, he doesn't get pushed back. That's fucked up. Why would you remove that? Or like... I mean, I guess it's more of a failure to replicate the behavior of what happens, but... No! Whoa! Didn't quite mean to do that, but... Oh, extra screen at the beginning of level 7. A unique color. Ah! Yeah, that was my fault. So funny that you just start in the middle of the screen. In that extra screen. Looks very strange. And it looks like there's a roof above too. But yeah, like pushing enemies into traps, pushing them off ledges, like that's a extremely fun and cool and satisfying, memorable aspect of combat in this game. And they're just like, nah. Guess it was... They couldn't afford to have one frame of enemies being airborne. You know what? Let's just experiment real quick. Alright, so it actually... Okay, that's a very funny interaction. Sneak stepping off the edge and still grabbing the other ledge. So in some versions that we played, dropping that tile did not close that door on the left, so you can just drop down and go to the exit, including the Spectrum version and the Master System version. In the Mega Drive version, however, if you do that, you're soft locked, because when you come back around, the switch there on the bottom right will open both gates. But in the Mega Drive version, it will not open the left gate if you have dropped this tile. I guess we'll see how this version behaves. If we make it that far. That was pretty close. This stage is also kind of rough. There's quite a bit of combat, but... There's one... Oh my... Kind of perilous fight with the guy on a ledge. Ledge guarding. But I was going to say, at least we get the health extension before we make it to him. Oh my, he hit me during the parry pose. That's cool. That's definitely supposed to be able to happen. So Was I thinking there was something... Like, if your attack goes through them, like, you definitely have to... Well, you can maybe step backwards, but you cannot attack again. Safer to, like, block. And the combat's, like, turn-based. Or, like, weird... I'm getting, like, infinite against the wall. Or it's like... I mispressed the wrong button. Or it's like Shiren rules, where like everything happens simultaneously. Like whenever a turn advances, everyone's action is processed. But you can't do things like more or less rapidly. I mean, it's not really that, but sometimes it feels like you missed your window of opportunity, so now you have to wait a second and a half before anything else will come out. Oh my god, I pressed the button like 4 times, and the attack did not come out. Like, it's unbelievable how unresponsive they managed to make the combat here. Like, forget the hitbox is not working. I mean, a pretty big deal, obviously, but that's the stuff you can see. When you're watching me play, you can see that the hitboxes aren't functioning. But you cannot see how bad this feels to play. Well, hopefully that's fine. It's just... the Flygon. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a unique issue. I don't think we've played on any other version where your sword will just harmlessly pass through the opponent a good, you know, 60-70% of the time. But what I'm saying is that even if that wasn't an issue, the combat would still be atrocious. Because we have, like, the compounding issues of your attacks don't always hurt the opponent when they come out, but also your attacks don't always come out when you press the button. So that's I didn't mean to do that. That's kind of a rough combination of issues there. But it's weird too, because it's not like inconsistent or consistently. It's not like, oh, there's like a second of input lag. It's just there's a strange rhythm to when inputs are allowed, I guess. So sometimes, like, the thing appears to happen more or less instantaneously, and then the next time there's like a second and a half of a delay, and it's like completely arbitrary. And this is so fucked up too. You can't step up to the edge of a loose tile and then jump over it, because you'll just step on the tile. The whole tile rules of this game, everything is messed up. Like, why even bother here? There's no way I can get through a fight. Like, dealing 4 hits of damage while taking 0? That's a big ask. Okay, sure. I guess nothing has to connect with anything. That's fine. We'll just pretend sword fight here. Just wave these sticks around and have a good time. Fucking blocking. Oh my god! That was like going well, and then the block didn't come out. like 3 times, and then the 4th and 5th time the block did come out and I was in my blocking pose and I just got hit and took damage anyway. See, sometimes like his attack didn't connect when I blocked, but the block didn't work either because there was no sound effect. Like, if only this version had the counterattack, I would make my life a little easier at least. Yeah, holy shit, this is not good for my blood pressure. Have we gotten past this guy even once on this level? I don't think so. Fuck's sake. Like, on average, my attacks will go through an enemy, like, 3 times in a fight. Unbelievable. Like, it's not some freak occurrence that... See there? That should have hit. That should have hit. That should have hit. That's 3. That should have hit. 4. Alright, okay. 4 unregistered hits. What a dangerous way to go through there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ah, I could only land 3 ghost hits before I died. Can we get up to 5 in a single fight? 1, 2, 3. 4. Maybe they have 4 hits of armor, and then after you hit them 4 times, they can take damage. First problem is that I can't really defend myself reliably during that time either. One, 2, 3, 4. Ah! I had a good feeling about the next hit. But alas. One. Okay. Unbelievable. Only 1 fake hit. Okay, that's a PB. Didn't even take damage. We're in a good position here. Or I died to this trap, of course, but... Okay, 1, 2, 3. Actually, that might have hit. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. Oh my god. 10 whiffed attacks. That's pretty bad. Especially considering he had 4 HP. So that means I hit him 14 times. No, Jafar might be pretty rough in this version. No spikes here. That a little easier at least. That's weird. You don't normally land there, but you don't get to do the cool drop. Boy. Oh, this has me scared. Makes me think I would weirdly... No, I should be fine. Yeah. Because you can always grab... It happened the way I predicted, that I would sort of slide into the pit. But as I figured, in a situation like that, sort of strangely, you can always grab the ledge. Some version we played recently, I think the Master System one, that didn't have those loose tiles. So yeah, how am I supposed to be able to get another, like, 4? We'll never know, and also never have to worry about it. Alright, even though we have health, this upcoming fight still has me concerned. Because if that guy pushes... well, I guess I don't know for a fact whether I can get pushed off a ledge during combat. I'm not going to assume that I can't. Just be safe, I guess it's better to stand here. Yeah, see, I can't push him off the edge. Oh. Okay, those are normally on that screen, but that's okay. This is kind of fucked up. Okay, let me just check something. Okay. I always forget if there's like one last fight here, but I think we're good. Zero visual effect. Oh, okay. Just extremely weird frame rate. Even the animation of me like stepping over the edge was like weird. Post editing slow motion where everything's jerky. Oh. All right, now for the hardest level in the game. Got the mouse. This looks so messed up. The carpet on the top left looks so weird. Like, this palette just looks like bugged. Doesn't look proper. Color palette. Oh, of course, we have to start with a fight. Oh my god, my block just... like, blocking either doesn't come out, or it comes out and it still just doesn't work. Insane. So yeah, this stage has a whole bunch of combat on top of the kind of demanding, tricky, puzzly bits. Okay. I do not dare try to jump over this. Yeah, so those traps up there, same thing is that... It's a good thing I guess I figured out... I mean, we won't get that far, so it won't matter, but... I would have gotten tripped up for sure, expecting that I would be able to stop in between those traps. But they're on adjacent tiles, which means that you cannot. Cool, my block didn't work. Baxter's not functioning is absolutely maddening. Not really the only thing that is either, I feel like, in this. He's he's just permanently facing to the right. Okay, that's interesting. That's how that jump's supposed to be. Like, you're supposed to have to do that. Spectrum version just had these two gaps be the same distance. Guess if I can have this guy die on the switch, that would be a good thing. But yeah, just glad I fucking survived. I mean, I guess I might as well see if we can just run through. Worked. Are you shitting me? I was clean on the other side. I was not in any way caught in that trap. Ugh. I mean, that wasn't the end of the level, but it was close to it. We still had to, I think that was the last fight. I'm getting, like, weirdly oh, I can't even... Words cannot describe. I mean, try as I might. I don't think I can fully express the degree of fuckedness of this game's combat. Only have to endure another 6 minutes, but of course at this point I'm like... upset at having to... Why did I try that? Having to abort the game and not finish. Kind of like not on my terms. But, you know, it's probably for the best anyway. Right. It always feels kind of miraculous whenever that happens. You get through a fight unscathed and you're just like, how did that happen? Like, what's going on here? That doesn't seem right. Like, I'm just baffled at how I got killed by that trap, because I deduced when I did that thing earlier where it's like, all right, so if I tap right on the D-pad, I will move exactly 2 tiles. So I'm standing 1 tile away from the trap. I will run through the trap, and I will stop 1 tile away from the trap. But I must have just, like, very barely somehow been... I don't know, physically, clearly I was through the trap, but because your position is, like, you know, very binary on a tile or not, at whatever point in the animation that he, like, transitions from moving from 1 tile to the next, you know, the trap just activated before that transition point, I guess. But it's highly unintuitive because I guess that doesn't correspond well to the visual presentation. I guess these guys, I guess they just have iframes on their walk. I can't hit them if they've been walking forward recently. Which is completely backwards compared to most versions where it's a good strategy to hit them while they're advancing, because when they're walking forward, they cannot attack or block. But here, I guess they just can't get hit. I will say that for everything else that's messed up in this version, making those running jumps is actually not difficult. I was having trouble in the beginning because I was kind of acclimatized to the Spectrum version, which is kind of strange. And more importantly, different from this version. But once I kind of recalibrated myself, it's been fine. I don't think I've really had any problems with it. I was mashing block as soon as I entered combat, but it didn't work. I love just getting hit through my block. That feels great. I'm glad that at least this part running through here should work, unless it's on a global timer or something. That felt real bad. But we got through at least. Alright, here we are. Yeah, I made sure to ran like an extra tile. Oh my god, my block didn't come out. Like, I'm just getting used to the idea of delaying my attack to see if I have better odds of hitting them. If I specifically wait till after they've stepped forward. I mean, trading isn't ideal, but it's better than my attack just not working and then getting hit afterwards. So I guess that's probably the strat, which, again, it just feels so wrong to do. This is the complete opposite of every other version. Well, maybe not every other version, but the original and good versions. My prediction was correct, though, that the neighboring jaw traps on the, like, sort of final screen up there, those ones, wouldn't come into play, because we wouldn't make it that far. That has panned out. I don't think we'll get there in the next 90 seconds. We got pretty close. Closer than I think I expected. So I'm not sure if we have 1 minute and like 55 seconds left now, or like I think that's how it would work. But we have played versions of this where 1 minute remaining is the last indication that you get. Come to think of it, I guess this is another version that has the timer on screen at all times. Which, I don't have strong feelings on it one way or the other. But I think I kind of prefer the original way. Like, you could argue that it's a convenience to have it there. But I think just presentationally and sort of how it affects your perception of... Yeah, there we go. One doesn't do the second countdown. The inevitable rematch. This text is not in every version. Anyway, boy, what a mess. What a bad version of a great game. Like I said, I didn't have hopes or expectations going into this. But between this and the Spectrum version, I was expecting to have a little bit of a better time today. But, you know, I dare say I think that the worst should be behind us. I think we could maybe keep that running for the background music, but I don't know, this is just gonna put us on this. Oh, whatever, fuck it, let's shut this down. I think we've got. I mean, I'm attaching a lot of hope and faith in those last 3 versions, but at the very least, the last 2 ones should be based on the original source code, so they should play properly. And in fact, I know that the Atari version is essentially a port of the Micro version, so I think they will likely be very similar. But I don't know either of those systems well enough to have a clear idea what to expect. But you know, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color versions turned out to be largely identical, and it was still worth looking at both, even if they were both identical and terrible. I know that from what I've seen, the Commodore 64 version has like cool graphics that I like, and the Xbox Live Arcade version, POP Classic, is not my not my preferred iteration of Prince of Persia, but compared to a lot on this list, it is at least a perfectly palatable, very playable version of the game. So, game number 19 results indeed in the skull streak continuing. So I'll say this. I know the Xbox Live Arcade version well enough that I can essentially guarantee a trophy. We should... I don't know what would happen for me to not finish that game. That's the one version I've actually completed deathless even, so that should not be a problem. The phone version I'm less familiar with, so who knows? But I think it's going to be pretty decent. At least, you know, for the big boy version, they got the basics right. It has a lot of quirks of its own because they added a bunch of stuff to it with the like some new moves, and they sort of... you're playing as the prince from like Sands of Time, and he's got his like whole soul patch parkour, you know, flavor all over it. So they've sort of smoothed out and streamlined a bunch of the movement in a way that I don't particularly like. But it's, you know, it's mostly aesthetic. It's mostly aesthetic, but not entirely. The combat's also a little bit different, but they clearly made it with an understanding of how the game is supposed to function. So it doesn't have weird quirks like a lot of these other bad versions where there's a lack of understanding of the original game on display. I think the changes made in POP Classic are changes that I don't like, but they are not changes made seemingly by accident as a result of not understanding how the game is supposed to function. They come across as deliberate changes made to, you know, in an attempt to make the game more accessible and appealing to people who are not experienced with the original game. And I think as far as that goes, they probably did a decent job at that. I just don't think I don't feel personally that they were fully able to do it without compromising some aspects of the original game that I personally enjoy. I don't think it's a bad version. In fact, I would probably recommend it to someone, you know, over some of these other versions, for its sort of accessibility and such. But at the same time, the way they smoothed some things out and made some things a little easier, I think more frequently than not undermine legitimate, challenging, and interesting aspects of the original game. But we'll leave more of that discussion for next time when we are going to be playing those 2 versions, the J2ME and Xbox Live Arcade versions of Prince of Persia Classic. But as far as our verdict on Game Boy Color Prince of Persia, I mean, honestly, the only fair thing, I think, to give it the same rating as the original Game Boy version. It's infuriating in all the same ways for all the same reasons. I love the fact that it has a unique color palette for every level. That's a genuinely awesome thing that I've been specifically mentioning as something I would like to see. But that's also kind of the only thing they did in porting over their 7-year-old bad version of the game. So, you know, it's you. I feel like you could maybe have asked for a little something more. Even if they added back the skeleton to the game, you know, they still didn't give the princess a bedroom. She still has this little, you know, prison cell. You know, to say nothing of the multitude of incredibly awful gameplay issues, obviously. But we did it. We got through the experience, if not the full game, of the ZX Spectrum version and the Game Boy Color version. And yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see how things pan out in terms of scheduling. As usual, I can't really say for sure when my next stream will happen. It'll happen at some point. Maybe later this week. But I think doing the two versions of POP Classic together makes sense, but I guess it would kind of make sense to do the two last versions on the same stream as well. We could reasonably squeeze 3 games into one stream. I think like the Xbox Live Arcade version might be like the fastest, because most likely we're gonna complete it, and we might complete it kind of quickly. And if the Java version is also good, like that's the thing, right? Playing one game should take about an hour tops, you know? A little bit more, allowing for pausing to talk about stuff or whatever, or, you know, technical issues like we have with the Spectrum version. But if everything goes ideal, we'll be done in like 45 minutes. Now, obviously, I'm not going to take for granted that that's going to happen, but if that were to happen with both the Java and the Xbox Live Arcade version, then it's not inconceivable that we might just try to squeeze in the Commodore 64 version in the same stream. Well, we'll see. I'll make sure to have all 3 of them ready to go, such that if time allows, we'll be able to do them all in one go. Otherwise, we'll see. We'll see. If we end up having to do the Micro and Atari versions on separate streams, that's not exactly the end of the world either. But this will be it for me today. I shall go make some dinner, I think. I hope you had a better time than I did. Well, I had a pretty good time, but well, I hope you had a better time than I did anyway, I guess. Well, let me see who we can crash here. Let's see what's happening. I guess it's been a minute. Cody _ continuing on his 45 million hour quest to beat Populous. That seems like a good time. Thank you for the kind words, Flygon. Appreciate that. I hope everyone will tune in for the last few episodes and together with me discover what all those versions are all about. Well, if I can, I'll do that later, I guess. But yeah, that's it for me today. I'll see you guys some other time. Thank you very much for hanging out. And yeah, let's go raid Cody. Have a nice evening or whatever time it is. Goodbye.